对，总的位置吧。
Okay, let's get the room in order. Welcome to this press conference of forced organ harvesting survivor from China recounts experience along with a few medical professionals, human rights lawyers, and NGO leaders. This program is live streamed or arranged by ETAC. Then it's also simultaneously translated into Chinese for interested Chinese audience. I am Professor Sen Nieh. I have been teaching at the Catholic University for more than 40 years in Washington, D.C. I'm also the director of Stop Forced Organ Harvesting by Chinese Communist Party, SFOH, which is the organizer of today's press event. SFOH is a nonprofit organization. Its mission is to expose crimes of forced organ harvesting of prisoners of conscience. That CCP is victimized and of its own citizens because of the freedom of speech and the freedom of belief. Yeah. Today in Washington, D.C., there is a tornado watch and a flood warning. The old Chinese saying, 风雨不人来, which means that we are very happy and grateful for old friends to join us at this event. So welcome the audience in the room, the audience across the YouTube in the world, and our Chinese audience listen to the simultaneous translation. Yeah. So let me start. Let me start first. Why rescue Mr. C? I have been doing with a small group of us rescuing victims in the past 20 years. We have rescued many of them, particularly those severely tortured by the Communist Party of China. So we have rescued that. Many of them share their experience to our governments, to our Congress, and a few of them testified as our Congress in the past 20 years. Then Mr. Pei Ming Cheng, so I used to call him Mr. C, so I'm going to use that. So Mr. C is one of them. It's a very unique case. Then why rescue Mr. C in the past 10 years? A friend of mine presented his pictures. The picture showing that there's a long scar from his back to the front on his chest. 3 pictures of that with 14 inches scar, and show me all the pictures that he was in the hospital at the surgery. One of the pictures particularly, you can see small Chinese letter, 第四医院大庆 number 4 hospital is there. And also present to me a dozen of warrants of arrest. This is one of them. You see, this is by Public Security Ministry of China. We want him back. Okay, it is very rare the case that for prisoner of conscience that they want them back with warrants of arrest, particularly they give the huge reward of 50,000 Chinese dollars, which is about 6,500 US dollars, a big sum of money to want him back. Next slide. I did a translation of one of them. I have more a dozen of them from different part of the China, from central government in Beijing, northeastern Gansu, Guizhou, Fujian, Zhejiang, Shanghai, all over China, want him to more or less the same thing. It described on March 3rd, 2006, Mr. C escaped from hospital, which is another proof that he's a real one, proved by CCP. So, and they want him back, and what he looked like with square face, with single eyelid, okay, as tall as 150, 160 centimeter, 180 centimeter. So these three things, the scar on his body, the warrants of arrest, and the picture from the hospital, that interests me. And immediately I thought of this could be the survivor of forced open honesty. So we tried that, but it is a long story, but it takes 9 years to bring him today to Washington, D.C. Then I'm very fortunate. On the surface, he is the person I rescued. But actually behind the scene is not the story. Without the blessing of our government, particularly State Departments and Congress, this won't be happening. So he was one of the last group that came to the United States before the COVID-19 lockdown. And I'm very honored, next slide, very honored and happy to have Dr. Bob Destro, the Assistant Secretary of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor of State Departments, who really facilitate the rescue. He looked into the case and rescue him. I don't want to take the credits. I want to Dr. Destro to give us some comments that Professor Destro is well known, a law professor, and he used to be the faculty and at a certain time the dean of the law school at Catholic University. And he served at Trump's administration from 2019 to 2021. Then he's a long-time supporter of civil rights and human rights. Without further ado, I give my place to Dr. Destro.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Nieh. I have Dr. Nieh, who was a colleague of mine at Catholic U, to thank for all of this. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here today. And he brought to me the case of our friend Mr. C quite a long time ago. And when I went into the State Department, I took the prerogative that assistant secretaries have, and I started asking some questions like, should we investigate this? And I got quite a bit of pushback. And so I took the prerogatives that assistant secretaries have, and I stamped my foot and I said, just do it. And so through the work of some very dedicated people on our staff, who I will leave them nameless for now, but people here around the table know who they are. We got him out of Thailand, we got him into the United States, and it's been an adventure ever since. And there's been a lot of research that went on into this. Those pictures are pretty compelling. They beg for answers. And so what we have been doing, and I have to thank Dr. Charles Lee here, who spearheaded the effort to get the research done. And like any good lawyer, I know I'm supposed to know when to shut up. And I'm going to do that now, because what we did is we asked experts to come in and give their opinion. I'm not an expert in these kinds of things. I'm an expert in human rights. And so we got it to the stage where I think we needed it, which is to bring Mr. C here to get him looked at by specialists. And as I can continually, and I think sometimes frustratingly for both Dr. Lee and Dr. Nieh, is to say, I don't care what the evidence shows. This person is a human being. He needs to be treated just like everybody else is treated. And if the evidence doesn't show, forced organ harvesting, then so be it. He has a good life. But if it does, then we all need to be taking it very seriously. So I'm going to turn the podium back over to Dr. Nieh and let him talk about what comes next.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, today is not only about the brave man, Mr. C, because millions of people, prisoner of conscience, being imprisoned, tortured, murdered for organ demand. He's one of the very, out of the million that can stand up and speak. So our press conference is not only for that. The purpose is to urge the attention of our society, our media, our Congress and government to pay attention to forced organ harvesting, to organize an independent international delegate to enter China to investigate us, to give us an answer. We have done our resources. We want the righteous part of the society and the government to do that with us. Investigate forced organ harvesting in China. The program today is we're going to have Mr. C to describe his story. The detail of his stories is in the media package. He will simply summarize that, followed by Dr. Lee describe the medical process to fill in the gap of the common sense of the medical knowledge. Then after that, we have a group of reputed medical professionals share their medical assessments of the case. Then followed by a group of NGO leaders to support, to condemn the forced organ harvesting. Then after that, we have Q&A sessions. All of you can ask questions. Then we don't want to drag too long, so we're going to do boom, boom, boom for the program. So first of all, the next slides, next one. We will introduce this brave man who dared to stand up in Washington, D.C. to tell his story, Mr. Cheng Pei-Ming, Mr. C.
自我介绍一下，我叫陈佩明，1965年8月29日出生于黑龙江省，梯溪市张溪煤矿。
Yes, my name is Cheng. I was born in August 29th of 1965 in Zhangxi coal mine of Tiexi City of Guangdong province in China.
1998年3月份开始修炼法轮功，1990年7月2号遭受迫害，我曾5次被抓捕。2001年12月，我被非法判刑8年。
So I started practice Falun Gong since March of 1998, but since July 20th of 1999, the Chinese Communist Party started persecuting Falun Gong. I have been arrested and detained for 5 times. In December of 2001, I was unlawfully sentenced to 8 years in prison.
2004年4月16日，大庆市监狱将我们家送到大庆市第4医院。 在我不同意的情况下，医院对我做了器官移植手术。
in November 16th of 2004, against my will, I was forcibly sent to Cheng's the 4th hospital by Cheng prison, and they forced me to go through the organ transplant surgery.
摘除了我的部分器官，我手术时是这样预警。赵警察赵狱警说，他听说护士讲，他从事30年医护，第一次做了移植器官手术。
So I was when the surgery was going on, there was a prison police whose name is Zhang. He was holding the gun that was over. He was told by the nurse in the surgery room that she has practiced medicine for 30 years. This was the first time she saw the organ transplant surgery.
我当时没有死去，幸运的活了下来。这是我当时在大庆第4医院做手术的留下的这个手术伤亡。
So I was lucky enough to survive, and this is the scars left over during that surgery.
2006年3月2日中午，我被监狱押往大庆龙南医院，他们对我的家人谎称我出了照片，并再次说我手术死亡率80%。一个穿绿衬衫的男医生戴口罩进来。
At noon time of March 2nd of 2006, I was once again forcibly sent to another hospital in Lantos City, which is Lantos Hospital. They told my family members that I was swallowed some knives and it's very risky, so we need to rescue his life. And the mortality rate is 80%. And after I went to the patient ward, the doctor came in and touched me and said that I will be operated on next day.
说明天给我做手术，我心里明白，这一次我不可能再活了，他们想杀死我。
He told me that I will be operated on next day. I knew in my heart that I would not be able to survive this time that he could kill me.
3月3日凌晨2点钟，我这一次我借上厕所的机会，我顺利的逃脱，从防火通道顺利的逃脱医院。
So on the March 3rd, about 2 a.m., I went to the bathroom across the hall and then I saw the fire escape and I catch that opportunity and escaped from the hospital.
从此以后，我过上了隐姓埋名逃亡的生活。
So ever since then, I've been living a life of hiding and escaping without my personal identity.
2015年，在朋友的帮助下，我逃离了中国。2020年，我被美国政府官员营救到美国，再次谢谢美国政府。
So in 2015, with the help from friends, I was able to escape to Thailand, and in 2020, with the help from the U.S. government, I was able to be rescued to the United States, and thankful to the U.S. government. Thank you, Mr. Destro.
我是中共活摘的幸存者，中共在我身上看到了他们可榨取的财富。
So I'm the survivor of the forced organ harvesting by the CCP, and the CCP saw that how much they could get from my body.
那就是我的器官，我是人呐。
The things they can get from body is my organs, but I'm a human being.
中共是在吃我的人肉，医生是在挖我的器官的屠夫。
The CCP is like trying to eat my flesh, and the doctors was like butchers who are trying to get the organs from me.
我不仅仅是在为我发声，更是为那些失去生命的难友们发声。
I'm not only speaking out for myself, I'm also speaking for the friends of mine who lost their lives in prison.
他们有吕猛新、王大元、袁清江、许继善、王宇东、朱红兵等20多人。
So they, their names are like Liu Hongbin,
吕猛新、
李猛新、王大元、袁清江、许继善等等 and like total like more than 20.
我今天有勇气站出来，就是因为我曾经和他们有一个约定。
So the reason I have that enough courage to stand out because we have agreement among ourselves before.
无论是谁活着出去，都要把这里的真相讲出去。
Whoever could get out alive must speak out about the truth inside.
对于我今天所经历的一切，如果你们有疑问，我可以给你们解答。谢谢大家。
All the things I've said that if you guys have any questions, I can answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then the next group will be speaker will be medical professionals. Before we bring them their statements, I have Dr. Lee to explain some of the basic common sense about livers, lung of the human bodies. Dr. Charles Lee completed his 6 years of medical training at Sun Yat-sen University Medical School in China. He earned a master's degree in physiology from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Then he joined Harvard Medical School in 1995 to conduct research in MRI imaging and disease diagnosis and passed U.S. Medical Board exam. After 1999, he went back to China a few times to counter the deceptions and defamations of Falun Gongs by CCP, leading to his arrest in 2003. He was jailed for 3 years and released in 2006. Ever since then, he advocates for human rights and exposing CCP's heinous crimes of forced organ harvesting. Dr. Lee has testified twice at the U.S. Congress.
Thank you, Professor Nieh, and thank you, everybody. We are releasing a report on Mr. Cheng's case with all the details, medical evidence, and the report is available in the media package. Since his case is also complicated, we have a Q&A, also available. So I will just give a brief summary over here for what we have found. So ever since he came to this country in 2020, then we have done 3 CT scans, 3 ultrasound, 2 X-rays with one of them barium, and 1 MRI. We have collected 4,000 image slides, and upon analyzing them, we have found all the evidence with endorsement from other doctor professionals. So I will give you some kind of summary. The first is that the left liver lobe is being surgically removed. So over here, what was found is that the left liver lobe, and also it's section 2 and 3 different kinds of classification was surgically removed. And over here, from the CT scans, you can see that this portion is missing, and over here it's also missing. But in the meantime, the section 4 over here is hypertrophied, which is like enlarged. After this is removed because the liver has kind of regeneration character, so they can grow over. So this section 4 is enlarged. So then we can move to the next. For the more evidence, we have found that on the left side of the liver, then this is the scar tissue we have found, because after you have cut the liver, there's a parenchymal cut, and it will be a scar formed in a few days. However, the liver regenerates, so it will be growing bigger. So then we just, these scar tissues was broken through. So this is like one of the real evidence showing that it's surgically removed. What we have also found is that his left lower lung, half of it is missing. So this is the CT scan showing that his left diaphragm is elevated in all imaging testing, MRI, X-ray, or CT scans, and this is the sagittal view of the chest, and you can see the rear part is also elevated, and this is the 3D reconstruction of the lungs, and you can see clearly that the left lung is shorter than the right lung, and the volume calculation shows that the left lung lobe is about 50% missing. And also, the story is that in November 19, 2004, there were pictures sent out by practitioners inside China. So the prison authority, or they are maybe angry or something, they just pulled out his drainage tube earlier, it's like only 4 or 5 days, and then his lung was further damaged. So this is the drainage tube scar, and you can see that this portion, the front part of his chest, was filled with blood. This is the scarf left over from before, even after like 18 years, it's still here. So this is also the scar. Okay. So for this one, just want to show that the inhumane treatment by the doctors on Mr. Cheng, because usually when you take the liver, then you would cut from the abdomen, but in his case, he was cut from the chest and it went all the way down. So we have all the evidence. This is sort of an illustration of the maneuver of the surgery. They cut the chest between 4th and the 5th ribs, and they went down, exposed the diaphragm. This is the diaphragm taken out from here, right, just for the purpose of illustration, and then they reached to the left liver lobe. So this is the diaphragm looking from the bottom up. It is very important to notice that there's some nerve called phrenic nerve, which is from his neck all the way down to the diaphragm, in order for a person to breathe. So they didn't care about Mr. Cheng. They cut the phrenic nerve from here. So this nerve, like the branches were cut. So then after the nerve is cut, the diaphragm, part of the diaphragm lost their function. So he was feeling like very difficult to breathe. And over here, the evidence shows that this is the after they pull out the drainage, right? So the drainage tube was pulled out very early. So then they have this fatty tissue coming out from the abdomen to the chest cavity, and over here that's the scar. Shows that how they went down from the chest and to the diaphragm, and this is the scar, the horizontal cut, and then this is the scar as well. So I think we just briefly introduced what they did, and the operation itself is very inhumane. So after the operation, he felt the pain and the pain on the chest, and also short of breath for a long time, for many years. And even now, he felt like pain, and also like when it is raining or he's tired, his feel the sufferings. And yeah, I think we're done with the pictures. So the other thing is that before he went to was forcibly sent to the hospital, he swallowed a nail and a knife. But upon the analysis, then we can draw the conclusion that the cut on his chest is not possible for taking out the knife and the nail, because usually 95%, more than 95% of those people who swallowed, foreign bodies through their esophagus or stomach will be taken out by endoscopic approach, which is very effective and a very mature technique in clinical settings. And this hospital, Daqing No. 4 hospital, they have been very experienced in this, and they published an article in 1993 China clinical doctors describing how they do this, And also for Mr. Cheng himself, he did not have any symptoms or signs at that time. They say that he needs a surgery, and because for these very rare cases, usually you have the aortic rupture or something. That is a very emergent situation. Usually people just die instantly, and maybe like 1 out of 1,000 cases you can save them. So this did not happen to him. He was like feeling well, and he was also have the strength to refuse the 6 policemen who are forcing him for the surgery. So, and also after he came here, we did all the medical exam, did not show anything, any surgery aftermath for the esophagus or stomachs whatsoever. And also the pictures showing, at minhui.net, did not see any feeding tubes on his nose or his stomach. So the conclusion is that they must have taken the knife and nails out early using endoscopic approach, and then they did this organ transplant procedure on him. I think I will stop here, and then if there's any questions, I'll take them. Thank you.
Squeeze off. David. About the complete story of Mr. C, there are 2 important documents. One is the testimony that written by Honorable David Matus. I'm glad that he made it. There's a delay of the airplanes. Then that will be in the folders of the media package. Then the file, if anybody of interest contact us, we will send that to you. This is more of the persecution story of Mr. C. Another is the 8-page summary report, more of medical evidence that Charles just introduced. Again, it's in the media package, and the file can be sent to you if you are of interest. Then the next one, we're going to have Honorable David Matus to speak. Is that okay? Yeah. So David is very, very well known, and is an international human rights lawyer, and also is well-known expert on forced organ harvesting. He is an award-winning and authors, lawyers, and researcher in Canada. He has served the government of Canada as Canadian delegation to UN General Assembly, UN Conference on International Criminal Court, and the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. He co-authors the first of the kinds, the Bloody Harvest book about forced organ harvesting, and published an updated version in 2016. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for his work on forced organ harvesting. Without further ado, I have David come up with the
Well,
First of all, I apologize for being late. My flight was canceled yesterday and delayed today. Anyhow, I'm here. The forced organ harvesting with prisoner of conscience victims exists throughout China. The victims are killed through organ extraction of vital organs and their bodies cremated. The primary victims have been practitioners of the spiritually based set of exercises Falun Gong, and also in large number Uyghurs from Xinjiang. In lesser numbers, Tibetans and House Christians, mostly Eastern Lightning or Almighty House of God, have also been victimized. The scale has been industrial and state organized. A whole sequence of independent researchers, independent both from the victims and the government of China over a period of 18 years since 2006, have come to the same conclusion about this abuse beyond any reasonable doubt. David Kilgore and I did the first report on this subject in 2006. Ethan Gutman, an American journalist, did his own research on the subject, published in 2014. The three of us then did an update to our joint works looking at transplant volumes only. Rather than rely on government of China official figures, we did our own calculations by adding up transplant numbers available from adding up individual hospital totals posted on their websites and newsletters. We calculated that the volume ranged from 60,000 a year of organs in the early years of persecution of Falun Gong to 100,000 a year in later years. Investigations show that only a small number of organs in China today are sourced from donors. The bulk are sourced from unwitting and unwilling prisoners of conscience. Since 2017 and the depletion of the Falun Gong are arbitrarily and indefinitely detained through forced organ harvesting, Falun Gong numbers have been supplemented by a large number of Uyghur victims whose organs have been shipped en masse from Xinjiang. The slaughter has not received the media attention commensurate with the scope and gravity of the wrong. The one reason for that is that the victims are not alive to tell what happened to them. For most mass atrocities, one can see the bodies or hear the testimony of the survivors. With forced organ harvesting, because the crime occurs in closed environments, prisons and hospitals, because bodies of those killed from organ extraction are cremated, making autopsies impossible, because there are no innocent witnesses, only perpetrators and victims, because the only records of what happened are official prison and hospital records not available to public scrutiny, what one can see with other mass atrocities, one cannot see with this mass atrocity. Cheng Ming is, in one sense, regrettably commonplace, a Falun Gong practitioner organ extracted. In another sense, he's unusual because he survived organ extraction. His vital organs, liver and lung, have been extracted only in part, and because he's also unique because he escaped both the Chinese authorities and China itself. He's alive and here to tell the tale. Like other Falun Gong practitioner victims, Cheng was never told he was going to be organ extracted, nor was he told afterwards that he had been organ extracted. He found that out only after he fled China and was medically examined. Despite the unusual nature of the case of Cheng, his survival and escape, his victimization demonstrates a general phenomenon. The brutality of the victimization of Falun Gong, a brutality that extends to organ harvesting. He illustrates a general phenomenon, the exception that proves the rule, the norm in this case being the gruesome reality of the mass killing of Falun Gong for their organs. Three of the World Health Organization principles on human cell, tissue, and organ transplantation are transparency, traceability, and openness to scrutiny. China today, even with its most recent legislation, which came into effect in May of this year, does not respect these principles. I call on China to respect the World Health Organization guiding principles. First of all, traceability. Where did the organs of Mr. Cheng go to? What happened to them? To what use were they put? Second, transparency. Show us the hospital records for Cheng Ming. Confidentiality is not an issue. Cheng consents. Third, openness to scrutiny. Allow independent expert investigators into the hospital where Cheng was organ extracted to see the records and interview the staff in a confidential setting. Ultimately, the onus does not fall on Cheng to say what happened to him. The onus falls on the government of China. We know the hospital that he was at. We know the dates he was there. We obviously know his name, and so does the hospital. The onus is not discharged by the government of China telling us what did or did not happen to Cheng. That onus can be discharged only by showing us what happened. I call on the government of China when it comes to what happened to Cheng, do not tell us, show us.
Thank you, Debbie, for particularly you fly all over the way from Winnipeg, Canada to Washington, D.C. for this event. Thank you. Thank you very much. Then Davey had investigative interview with Mr. C for hours. Then he wrote a very powerful testimony, a 6-page long, which is in the media package. Okay, and with back and forth questions, at least 25, 30 questions to clarify. So that testimony is the legal and standard testimony of Mr. C. And anybody have an interest to have that, let me know. I send you the file. Then after that, I'm going to present 3 medical professionals who review the images of Mr. C and make medical assessments. I have to be very frank with you. I have contacted a dozen of medical doctors at different time in the past 3 years. Some of them examined the part of the images. Some of them have a different angle of experience. So not all of them say he is the survivor. Some of them even have different opinions, which I understand. So I have to tell you that. So among this a dozen of medical professionals, and particularly last year's, there are 3 professionals I'm going to present here to share with you his medical assessments. First one is Professor Russell Strong. Russell Strong is a pioneer in the field of liver and cancer surgery and liver transplantations, both in Asia Pacific regions and internationally. He performed the first successful living donor liver transplant in the world from a mother to her son in 1989. Under his leadership, the unit at Prince Alexandra Hospital in Brisbane trained more than 85 international surgeons in liver surgeries and liver transplantations. And he made the presentations and medical examinations. He's over Australia, so he won't be able to attend. He sent his statements. I have Nancy to read for you.
Statement. In July 2023, I was approached by the Executive Director of the International Coalition to End Transplant Abuse in China, called ETAC, Susie Hughes, for an expert opinion on CT scans taken from a potential victim of forced partial organ removal in China. I served in a voluntary capacity on ETAC's International Advisory Committee and Australian Committee, www.endtransplantabuse.org. The details on the CT scans I viewed are as followed. JOIMTN, Road 73, Martin, Philadelphia, US, Station CT 86208. Pei-Ming Chen, 1965, August 29, U4050000517, account E03130132132, 2020, November 30. Analysis of the scans. First, the left lateral sector of the liver, segment 2 and 3, is missing. Second, segment 4 of the liver is present and hypertrophied, possibly as a result of a removal of the left lateral sector. That's the statement.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Particularly, I want to thank ETAC, International Coalitions to End Transplant Abuse in China. ETAC, the founding directors, Susie Hughes. David Matus is also the co-founder of ETAC. This organization helped a lot to check with medical assessments, and also they are live streaming of the program today. Then Russell Strong is a liver surgeon. The next one I'm going to present is a liver internal medicines from Taiwan. Again, he wasn't able to attend. There's time difference of 12 hours. And Dr. Ting Kai-Qing. Ting Kai-Qing is a attending physician of internal medicines at Yuan General Hospital, Kaohsiung, Taiwan. His specialty is in hepatobiliary and gastrointestinal diseases, ultrasound, endoscope. And he's sending his analysis through a recorded videos.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kai-Ting Ting. I'm a physician of internal medicine and a gastroenterologist of Tichun Hospital in Taiwan. In response to the patient's legal representative's request, I examined the case report with corresponding CT images of November 30, 2020 of Mr. C's case. My observation and assessment are as follows. First, his liver left lateral lobe is absent. Specifically, segment 2 and segment 3 are missing. Second, an increase in the size of segment 4 and hepatic right lobe is observed. This enlargement is likely associated with the regeneration of liver tissue after partial liver lobectomy. Third, the 3D reconstructed CT images show bumpy tissues on upper and lower sides of hepatic left lobe. Examination of the shape and the characteristics of these bumpy tissues suggests they are likely scar tissues from cutting of liver parenchyma. Conditions such as liver cirrhosis, hepatic fibrosis, chronic hepatitis, bacterial syndrome may cause bumpy liver surface, but these usually lead to systemic changes of the whole liver. In this patient, only a portion of the liver is involved. Other possible causes, such as liver tumor or liver abscess, are not found in a patient's history. And the clinical observation and examinations by doctors in the United States do not indicate any of these conditions. Thus, all these potential causes other than surgical scars have been excluded. If there are other questions about Mr. C's condition, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
What we have heard, one is a liver surgeon and liver transplantations expert, Professor Strong. And another is a liver internal medicines, and he ruled out all the liver diseases. and explained very well of liver regenerations. So they confirmed that the left lobe of livers was surgically removed and regenerated. The next one is Professor Devi McGiven, who is the expert of heart, lung, and organ transplantation. He is a cardiothoracic surgeon who trained in Australia and spent many years working at the University of Alabama's Birmingham, United States. He returned to Australia in 2013 and took up a position as head of cardiothoracic surgery at the Alfred Hospital and a professor of cardiothoracic surgery, Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. He cannot make it. He's sending his medical assessments, and I have Yongqing to read his statements. Yongqing.
In July 2023, I was approached via the executive director of the International Coalition to End Transplant Abuse in China, ETAC, Susie Hughes, for an expert opinion on thoracic CT scans, which were taken of a patient who may have been a victim of false organ procurement in China. I serve in a voluntary capacity on ETAC's International Advisory Committee and Australian Committee. Analysis of the scans. The CT scan was of a Mr. Cheng Pei Ming. The thoracic CT scan demonstrates that there has been removal of at least half the left lower lobe of the lung.
Thank you. Again, the experts on lung transplantations confirm there's a removal of half of the lower lobe of the lung during a surgery. Then I want to thank again for ETAC and these two doctors from Australia on the advisory board with David Matus and Susie Hughes and others. Thank for their righteous support and help. And then next I want to present a few leaders of our well-known NGOs to comment on this case. By the way, for those I received statements, I help already translate into Chinese. They are both English and Chinese in the media package. If anybody have interest to have that, and just shoot me an email, I'll send you all the files. So save you some time. The next one is Dr. Katrina Lantos Sweat. She is the president of Lantos Foundation for Human Rights and Justice. Dr. Lantos Sweat is the former chair and the vice chair of U.S. Commissions on International Religious Freedoms and a professor of human rights and American foreign policy in Tufts University. She currently serves as the board co-chair of the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea and the Budapest-based Tom Lantos Institute. She also serves on advisory board of UN Watch, the annual Anne Frank Award and lectures. She interviewed Mrs. C about 2 years ago with details, and she's over New Hampshire and won't be able to make it. He's sending his statement. I have Nancy to read her statement.
The Lantos Foundation previously had the opportunity to interview Mr. Cheng about his shocking audio at the hands of his captors, and we found his first-hand testimony to be credible and deeply disturbing. The materials presented today are incredibly important because They offer further evidence of the egregious human rights abuse happening in China in the form of forced organ harvesting. This outrageous violation of fundamental rights continues despite the Chinese government's claims to the contrary, and we must do more to raise awareness about it and call on governments to implement laws and policies designed to stop it. We commend Mr. Cheng for his bravery in sharing his story. We know that the Chinese government has no qualms about engaging in transnational repression when and where it deems it necessary. This makes his decision to speak out all the more courageous. We also applaud ETAC for its excellent and vital work to shine a light on China's abusive and illegal practice. We will continue to work closely with ETAC and other members of the international coalition who are committed to ending forced organ harvesting for good.
Yeah, next leaders of the NGO is Professor Wendy Rogers. She's a chairperson of the advisory boards of ETAC and Transplant Abuse in China. Dr. Rogers is a distinguished professor of clinical ethics and deputy directors of the Macquarie University Research Center for Agency, Values, and Ethics in Australia. She has a long-standing interest and expertise in the ethics of organ donation and transplantation. She has twice been a member of the Australian Health Ethics Committee, leading the developments of National Health and Medical Research Council's guidelines for organ and tissue donations. I have Nancy to read her statements.
Mr. C was forced to undergo surgery that resulted in the removal of parts of his liver and lung. He had no history of a medical condition requiring surgery and did not give consent for the surgery. Therefore, this is a case of a surgical assault resulting in theft of organ parts as well as pain and suffering. This case illustrates call-outs indifference to the human rights of prisoners of conscience in China. Not only was Mr. C incarcerated and tortured, he was drugged and assaulted by surgeons who removed parts of his organs without consent or medical need. I do not know why the Chinese doctors removed parts of Mr. C's liver and lungs. He did not have a disease or illness requiring this surgery. The portion of liver removed is consistent with securing liver tissue suitable for transplantation into a child, but I have no means of knowing if this was the purpose. What I do know is that Mr. C was surgically assaulted as part of a wider pattern of persecution, incarceration, and torture, and that this event happened to him because he is a practitioner of Falun Gong.
The last but not the least is Dr. Eric Patterson, President and CEO of VOC, Victim of Communism Memorial Foundation. By the way, there's a tornado watch, and some of the organizations closed down today. So, for instance, one of my respected leaders, her of Hassan's Institute, she cannot make it because of the closing down of the organization. Okay, a foreign policy expert and longtime fighters of totalitarianism, Dr. Patterson served as president of Religious Freedoms Institute, where he led IFI's efforts to advocate for religious liberty around the world. Prior to IFI, he was a university dean and professor. He served as a White House fellow at the State Department and an Air National Guard commander. He is an active scholar on the moral dimensions of national security and international affairs. I have Yunqing to read the last statement.
The account of this survival reveals deeply troubling evidence of coherent surgical procedures and severe human rights violations. At victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, we strongly condemn any form of involuntary medical intervention or abuse, especially forced organ harvesting, targeting vulnerable populations. This case highlights the urgent need to address medical atrocities carried out by the Chinese Communist Party. We stand in solidarity Falun Gong Protection Act. It is imperative that we work together to end this human rights violation and hold perpetrators accountable.
Yeah, thank you. That's all the presentations. Again, all these statements has Chinese translations in the media package. All the files can send to you if you like to know the details, and drop me the emails. And yes,
Final comment here.
yes, let's have Dr. Destro to follow up some comments, hopefully as my closing remark. Bob.
I hate to keep you a little longer. I hate to keep you a little longer, but I just want to make a comment. First time I ever heard of forced organ harvesting was in 1998, when a very good friend, Professor Mary Ann Glendon of Harvard Law School, used the term in a conversation about, I was planning on going to Europe to do some sabbatical, and she used the term organs of indeterminate origin. And the phrase struck me. And it's tempting for all of us to look at this as a unique Falun Gong issue. Human trafficking, this is a subset of human trafficking. We always hear about the border. We don't hear about the human trafficking. We always hear about problems in North Africa, but we don't hear about the actual slavery that goes on. So we don't hear about the human sex trafficking. This is human body parts trafficking. There's trafficking in dead body parts. There's been lawsuits against muckraking journalists because they've exposed the trafficking in fetal body parts. So what I'm telling you is this is a huge issue. Please, please do not say this is just a niche Falun Gong issue. It's not. It's a major problem, and it's one of those things like the story in Sherlock Holmes. It's the dog that didn't bark. You're not hearing about it. It's big. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Before we open up for Q&A, I want to mention again, for this brave man, Mr. C, he survived. But he's one of the millions. Almost 99.99% the victims of forced organ harvesting were cremated. He made it, but today's press events is not only to find out the facts about him and his forced organ harvesting crime as a whole. So we urge our society, the righteous NGOs, our Congress and governments, and pay attention to these new forms of evil on earth and put together the efforts to investigate, have an international independent delegation to enter China to investigate forced organ harvesting and let us know about what's happening. Okay, then we follow the Q&A, and any question from the media, If you can tell me your organization first. Yeah, please, Jack.
Jack Bradley with NTD. This question is for Mr. Destro. You said you faced some pushback when you were looking to get Mr. C over to the U.S. Can you describe what challenges you experienced and what kept you going?
Well, that's what kept me going. And you don't, thank you. You don't take a position like Assistant Secretary unless you have a strong constitution. And so basically there's always a tension in the State Department when you're dealing with any country. You know, do you point out the bad stuff? You know, do you take action, you know, to help people? Most of the people I worked with at the State Department were really good, hardworking, serious professionals. But there are policy differences, and some people thought that this was a sideline issue. That's why I volunteered to make that statement at the end. This is a huge issue, and people don't connect the dots between the selling of pieces and the selling of of whole people.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm Nick Kellick with the ETAC Times. This is for David Matus. There's, you actually, Dr. Nieh, he showed some evidence that Mr. C was being, hunted down basically by the authorities, which one would expect. I mean, frankly, I've been following this issue since 2006. I never expected we would ever see a survivor of this horrific practice because it's obviously something they want to hide really, really badly. And they kind of managed to some extent. It's still not known sufficiently with the, despite the incredible work some of the people on this stage have been doing on this issue. So, I mean, the question is, and you, David, you've taken this long testimonial from Mr. C. How is it that he made it to here today? How is it that he's still alive? This is kind of the question that I think a lot of people might have on their minds that understand how this whole system works, including how Dr. Destro mentioned that this, this organ trafficking thing is a global issue, but of course it's all very underground. We just don't hear enough about it.
Well, when it comes to his getting out of China or escaping the authorities, I mean, there are other cases that die. What's unusual about him is, and of course there's lots of practitioners who have been victimized, what's unusual about him was that he was only partially organ extracted. It's possible with organs to, let's say, donate a kidney and still survive. I mean, or donate part of the liver and still survive. But despite the huge volume of transplantations in China, I've never heard of anyone before who survived an organ extraction. The Chinese are systematically killing organ sources and cremating their bodies. A phenomenon like his is an aberration. But it's illustrative of the general phenomenon, as I was indicating, that Falun Gong are due to the extent of organ extraction. Now, why they extracted only parts of his body rather than allow him to survive, rather than everything? Well, if you read through his story, it looks like they were going to kill him the next time around because he escaped from the hospital. He escaped from the hospital after he was brought a second time, and after he was told a second time, after his relatives were told a second time that there's an 80% chance that he would not survive. But how he survived the first one, as I say, that's really up to the Chinese government to explain. I mean, why only part instead of the whole? I mean, we heard speculation from Wendy Rogers, maybe a child transplantation for a child rather than an adult, they didn't need a whole liver. It could have been some sort of medical experimentation. There's also some evidence in his narrative that this was not a transplant hospital, and so they were not sick systematically extracting organs from people who had some hospitals. And so it may be some sort of training exercise for them. But ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, we got the name of the hospital, Dashing Hospital number 4. We've got the dates, November 16th to 19th, 2004. We've got the name, Cheng payment. That's enough to put the onus on the government of China. That's enough detail that they should be able to say what happened and what didn't happen. So, I mean, I appreciate your question, but I would say, don't ask me, ask the government of China.
Just one quick comment. I wanted to just say, Mr. Cheng, you know, you're a very brave person to come forth about this, because obviously there's a certain very large regime that would be very uninterested in having you tell your story. So thank you for that.
Yeah, can we give him a round of applause? He's grateful. Not only Mr. C is a brave man, people on the panels are all very brave. Brave officers in our government, brave lawyers, brave doctors. And also brave of you there to attend. Okay, are there further questions? Okay, and Mr. C and all of them will stay. If you have follow-on questions more for yourself, then you are welcome to. They won't leave right away. There's a questions? Go ahead.
I may have two questions for Mr. C.
Sure.
Since your left part of your liver and lung were removed, and so could you please describe how your body felt after surgery? Did you feel different pain point inside your body, and also on the surface of your chest, because you have different part of body get removed, right? So how did the first surgery affect your health? Could you please give some details? 我可以说中文。我可以说一遍中文吗？我可以说一遍中文吗？对 ，OK， 因为你的那个肝脏的右叶吧被就因为你的肝脏的左部分被移除，然后你的那个你的肺部也有部分被移除，因为你就是你的身上伤口是不止一处，最起码有3处，所以就是说。我想问的是，在你第一次手术之后，你的身体是否不同的部位都有不同的痛点，包括身体内还是身体的表面，可不可以给一些细节？然后在这个手术之后，就是你觉得这个手术对你的身体健康具体有哪一些的影响？
我说能行的吧？
你这个可以。
我说话能听懂吗？可以。在我手术了，是11月19号我醒来的时候，当时我浑身处于麻痹瘫痪状态，根本无法动，就是无法动，我手就是浑身已经麻木。鼻子打氧气，我有图片，明慧网的图片，我2个脚同时往下打滴流，我的右手也打滴流，3个吊瓶往下打。这时候我就是醒了之后，我很饿，我饿了之后，我就对我身边那个就是因为在状态嘛，我的家人，我说我饿了，我想吃点，说你想吃点什么？我想吃点鸡蛋羹，完了他们就给我弄来。弄来之后，我吃完了之后还吃了一些罐头，吃完之后，完我又昏过去了，这个是昏过去了。
Yeah, let me just translate. Yeah, after I woke up on November 19th, I felt very painful in my chest. However, I could not move at all. So after I woke up, I saw like there were like IV drips on my legs and the hand, and there was oxygen tube on my nose, and I felt very hungry. So I told the visiting family members that I want to eat some egg curd, and they brought me and then a lot of them.
在4月23号，由大庆监狱，我被押回大庆监狱狱医院，我锁在床上，2个脚锁在床上，2个手锁在床，就是撑开了。那个我的伤口的线儿还没拆开，这时候我的剧烈疼痛，我就咬着牙，嘎吱嘎吱的咬着牙。完了，他们那个包夹犯人报告了监狱的那个医生，完了过来问我，说你给你打支杜冷丁止痛。这时候我说我没吱声，我沉默。
So after on November 23rd, they forcibly sent me back to Daqing prison, and there was a prison clinic. So in the clinic, they shackled me and handcuffed me again on the bed. So I felt very painful, but I could not move. So I only could grind my teeth. So they told the doctor, and Dr. Kim asked me if I need any painkiller. I did not say anything. So I want to.
然后我那个痛苦是生不如死。完了，由于咬牙的声音，他们惧怕我，就是那些犯人非常惧怕。他听到这个声音就我的疼痛难以忍受，他把我嘴又撬开，塞上木棍子，让我让我咬住木棍子。
So the pain was actually like making me like living worse than like being dead. So since I could not move, so I could only grind my teeth. So they were some kind of scared because so weird, and then they put a wood stick in my mouth, so I could only bite the wood stick.
就这样子，我忍受的痛苦，在12月2日，把我的身体的这个伤口的线儿全拆完。
So on December 2nd, they took all the stitches out of my chest.
由于狱警把我抬回那个当时4个犯人，押我回那个宿舍，就是监狱的那个犯人的宿舍。这时候我站起来，我头晕，一头栽在床上，我的那个打手臂那个点滴的针口顺时流血不止。
So after they took the stitches out, they sent me back to the cell, and I could not just stand at all. So I fell on the bed, and at that time, the IV drips broken, so all the blood coming out.
我回监狱宿舍之后，那时候我的大便干燥，我吃的是犯人那个茶粥，就是稀饭，我大便干燥，小便排不出来。最后我上厕所的时候，我跪在厕所里，我抠的满肛门都是鲜血直流，排不出便来，不敢用劲。
So since the food was so bad, so I could not move my bowels or urinate. So I had to kneel on the bathroom, trying to use my fingers to get the stuff out of my rectum, and the blood was coming out all over.
OK，
可以了吗？
可以了，好吧。
Okay.
Yes, the story of Mr. C lasts almost 20 years, and and also maybe very hard to believe, and that's the reason that we summarize a 4-page, frequently asked questions, about 8 questions about this complexity of the surrounding of his of the experience here, and this is in the media package, and we have with the file can send to you for reporters. Any other questions? Yes, yes.
This is Lee from NTD. I have a question for David Lantos. How do you
Well, I think part of the problem we've been dealing with, as I say, with forced organ harvesting is the fact that it hasn't really gotten the attention it deserves commensurate with the gravity and scope of the wrong, and that's partly because we don't have people like Mr. Cheng to talk about what happened. And so his is a very visible face. I can see already, just looking through the media package, that there's a story in the Telegraph, there's a story in the Sun, and I know that I've been dealing with other media as well that are interested in this, that haven't normally been following this issue. And the greater the attention, the more it poses an obligation on China, the government of China to answer. The government of China on the whole has said very little about forced organ harvesting. There's a tendency just to ignore it. The numbers of transplantation shot up dramatically after the persecution of Falun Gong began. And at this point, the government shifted its narrative, which was everything was coming from donations, to everything is coming from prisoners. But they were prisoners sentenced to death and then executed, and their organs were harvested after execution, and they donated their organs to atone for their crimes, which, I mean, there was no proof about these donations, and indeed, prisoners sentenced to death were a source of organs, but they didn't shoot up dramatically as soon as the persecution of Falun Gong began. Their abandoning the donation narrative was a result of the increase in transplantations as a result of the persecution of Falun Gong, from my perspective. But as I say, they needed a cover story for this increase, and it became the prisoner sentenced to death. I think what the story of Mr. Cheng does is to a certain extent pierce through that cover story, because this was happening sort of at the time when this was 2004, when the volume was just shooting up. And what's more, we've got somebody to talk about not just the details, but we've got very specifics, so that what happened in that date, what happened in that hospital, what happened to that person, which is the kind of detail that we don't have with others, because nobody else can say, this happened to me. So it just gives more of an onus on the government to account for what happened.
还有一个问题可以问程先生吗？
是。
就是想问一下，就是说您在站出来之后，您和您的家人有没有受到一些威胁，或者说您觉得自己是有这种，就是说自身的这种安全的威胁，然后您是希望得到怎样的保护？
You want me to translate the question? Yeah, the question was about if his family in China has been threatened by the CCP, or he himself facing some kind of danger, what kind of protection measures he needs.
我今天之所以站出来，就是因为我和我在一起那些难友们，他们已经不能发声了，他们已经离世了。我们曾经有一个约定，我们谁只要活得出来，一定要把那里的真相讲出来，让世人听到。至于我家人受到威胁，中共的什么手段都有。我能来到美国，可以说我是非常非常不容易了。这里我感谢美国政府、美国官员，他们感谢您，他把我营救出来。
So the reason I came out to speak out is because we have so many friends and fellow Falun Gong practitioners who have died, and they couldn't speak out at all. And so as far as for my families in China, the CCP could do anything. However, I thank the U.S. government for the efforts to rescue me.
继续。
很
简短的单句。
OK。我和我家人 我真能走到来到美国这个舞台上，我和我家人多年不见面了，因为他们死死地监控着我的亲戚朋友，我不能和他们见面，我和他们见面会给他们带来危险。
So I'm not seeing or met my family members for many years, and I could not do that either because if I did that, I would bring dangers to them.
我来到了美国，我感谢美国政府、美国官员，他们营救我出来，我谢谢他们。
Anyways, I came to this country because the help from U.S. government, so I thank them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're running out of time. So they will stay for a while. If you have any member of media can go with follow-on questions. We have to conclude today's press event. I want to thank people remotely interested Chinese listen to simultaneous Chinese translations, and I want to thank people watching the YouTube streamlined from ETAC, no matter whether you are or you're media. And I want to thank you all to attend this. Then there have already quite a few medias report that in England, in Australia, in Washington DC, and this will follow on with more. Then let's put together the efforts to pay attention to this forced organ harvesting, hopefully with international independent delegation to enter China to investigate. Thank you all. Thank you for attending. Thank you for the panel.
Charles.
Yes.